Okay. So today we are going to be talking about the importance of the supplemental essay, and I invited schools that I know have supplemental essays and find them to be very invaluable in their review of your application. So they're going to talk about their schools and they're going to talk about the essays. And towards the end, we will have questions. If you do have questions while we're having this event, please put them in the chat. We will try to answer them as we go, and if not, we will answer them at the end. I'm Kate Heald. I'm the College and Career Navigator at BCC High School. Our title was just changed. Hard to say that. We also have Gail Evans from Walter Johnson High School and Jenny Davis from Sherwood High School. So I am going to turn my computer and video off, my voice and video off, and let our reps, and actually Jennifer, you're on my screen right now, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Wonderful. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hirsch. I'm the Associate Dean of International Admission here at Claremont McKenna College. So I'm going to do a brief intro of CMC. And then am I speaking about the supplementals right away?
You talk about your school first, who you are, what you do, what kind of students you are looking for. This is a good plug for you guys too, and then talk about how the supplementals play into your evaluation.
All right. Well, that's a lot of fun stuff to cover. So who I am. I've been working here at Claremont McKenna since 2015, but in admission since 2010, all at small liberal arts colleges. So I do have a good sense of how that application process works. But Claremont McKenna College is a little bit of where we are. We're in Southern California, so we're located right outside of Los Angeles in a city called Claremont. A little bit about our surroundings. We're also a part of a consortium of colleges. It's called the Claremont Colleges. We are one of 5 undergraduate liberal arts residential colleges within the consortium. The consortium works together in really interesting ways and provides opportunities for students that look a little bit more like a medium-sized institution, but we are all independent institutions, completely separate administratively, financially, and all the programs that we offer. And so you have these 5 interesting different schools right next to each other. So a unique feature of our consortium is that we are all next door. All of our campuses fit together within a 1 square mile space. So that makes it really easy for students to take advantage of the shared resources. But for the purpose of time, I'm going to focus specifically on CMC and give you a sense of who we are, our mission, and the kinds of students that thrive at CMC's campus. We were founded in 1946, so a fairly young college. Our mission is to prepare our students for responsible leadership in business, government, and the professions. We do that through a traditional liberal arts model. We have a broad range of majors. We have small class sizes. We encourage students to take classes across all disciplines. However, we do call out a few specific areas of interest, given that our goal is to ensure that our students are leaders in the public and private sectors of society. We do want to ensure that all of our students have a strong foundation in understanding the social sciences, specifically in areas of economics and finance, public policy, international relations, and government. And so while not all of our students major in those areas, many of our students, if not all of them, will ultimately take at least some intro classes in those areas that really give them a foundation in understanding what leadership means in society, whether they go into the public sector, into corporations and businesses or nonprofits, or within education or go into a government sector. So we do want our students to have a good sense of how society functions and works and think about how they might do things differently and how they can make a positive change in the areas that they're really excited and passionate about. So that's one element of our mission statement. A few other key elements of the CMC experience is our emphasis on leadership. We mention it in our mission statement. It's something we do look for in the application process, and that is a tangible education on campus in and out of the classroom. So we do have a leadership sequence. We have a strong focus on career exploration and understanding what a student's path will be professionally beyond just their time in college. And it's something that we encourage in extracurricular activities. There's a bit of a focus on pre-professional clubs and organizations, but students have leadership opportunities through research institutes, through social clubs, through pre-professional clubs and organizations, starting their own organizations as a small campus. That's something that's really easy to do within student government and the residential community as well, with leadership positions there. I also mentioned that focus on career services and career exploration. That's a strong theme at CMC. It begins in a student's first year. We want students to think about how their CMC experience will set them up for success professionally and in their lives beyond their college experience. And so putting an emphasis on one-on-one career counseling and guidance, as well as getting early and frequent professional experiences over the summers, over college breaks, and doing networking treks where students go in small groups to various cities to explore industries in depth before you jump into a full summer internship. And we have immense resources for students over the summer to take advantage of funding to help support unpaid internships and research experiences that happen over the summer. The last element that is important about CMC, and this actually ties into our supplemental questions really well, is our emphasis on what we call the Open Academy. These principles, this program, this broad program and many programs within it focus on viewpoint diversity, constructive dialogue, and freedom of expression. We want to create an environment, we do create an environment where students can explore lots of ideas and perspectives. We want students to feel heard and engage in challenging and important topics in the world today, local, national, worldwide. And we want students to be able to feel comfortable diving into all aspects of opinion and perspective surrounding the things that are important to them, important to others around them. So this is featured quite prominently in our Athenaeum Speaker Series, where we're bringing speakers to campus every Monday through Thursday night of the academic year. It's open to students to attend as many or as few Athenaeum speakers as you'd like, but the goal really is to see many perspectives and ideas. So you might see many topics represented, or a similar topic represented among different speakers, but the speakers will be coming at that topic from different perspectives and different sides of that idea or concept or issue. So that's CMC in a nutshell-ish, and just kind of the key features. Students that really thrive here are students that really connect with our mission, and the Open Academy principals want to be in a place where they are eager to explore their own leadership path, their own leadership philosophy, and put their learning into action. So I describe CMC students as go-getters. They're very problem and goal oriented. So problem solvers, creative thinkers. I think I really identify with the pragmatic approach. So finding ways to kind of apply clubs, organizations, interests of all types into a sort of how that applies to the things that they're really curious about out in the world. Okay, for our supplemental questions, CMC has 2 supplemental questions, and they focus on the things I just mentioned. One is very specifically asking you why you are interested in attending CMC through the context of our mission, and that is what I mentioned at the start: responsible leadership in business, government, and the professions. So really understanding CMC, why we sort of implement our mission, how we implement our mission, and not just identifying programs that align with that mission, but sort of the values that align, that you hold and that you are seeking from a college experience that align with what we talk about in our mission statement. The second supplemental question is based on the Open Academy, talking about having students tell us a time in which they were in a conversation or a moment where they disagreed with folks that they were in that conversation with, and how that unfolded, how they handled that disagreement or dialogue or discussion. And again, focusing on understanding how those Open Academy principles align with the things that you're interested in exploring on campus as well. So tangibly, the supplemental questions for CMC's process are important because I mean, we're all selective institutions here, but for us in our process, the supplemental questions and the optional videos and interviews that we encourage are often the things that we continue to go back to when we're making the most difficult decisions. Because we usually get to a point where, academically, all the students sort of at the end of our process are academically competitive, and they're in a really strong position. They often have really immense accomplishments in their resume. And so our final decisions truly will be resting on the best fits for CMC. And those supplemental questions are directly asking you to provide us with your insight about your fit with CMC. And so we continue to go back to those responses. So my advice on those are to really dig into the institutions that you're applying to, really have a sense of who they are beyond just sort of the surface level elements and the surface level programs, and getting a sense of what they really mean at the root of their question. What does their mission mean in practice, and not just in like specific programs, like I want to major in economics, but sort of this idea of becoming a leader in an area that you're excited about is a more compelling response, I think, in response to a CMC mission question than just I want to major in economics. So I'm going to stop and turn it over to whoever's next.
Thanks, Jennifer. I can hop in. So hello, everybody. My name is John Sokolsky. I'm an associate director of admissions at Tufts University. I'll do sort of same thing, give a bit of an overview of Tufts, and then talk about our supplemental questions. So Tufts University is a medium-sized research university with a liberal arts college feel in Medford, Massachusetts, which is about probably 5 miles or so outside of downtown Boston. So we're like super close to the city, but not quite in the city. So I say we're a medium-sized research university with a liberal arts college feel. What does that mean? Because that sounds like admissions mumbo jumbo. What I really mean is that Tufts is a really big school in terms of resources, but small in terms of campus feel, community vibe. So we've got just under 7,000 students or so, spread across three main undergraduate schools. So the only decision you need to make when you apply to Tufts is which school are you applying to. So that's the School of Arts and Science, which is where the majority of our students are enrolled, about 75%. The School of Engineering, where we have around 1,000 or so engineers, and the School at the Museum of Fine Arts, where we have a few hundred students. So one of the cool parts about Tufts, and so I also went to Tufts, graduated in 2014, so I'm also during this time happy to answer questions from like a student life perspective. I had my 10-year reunion last year. It's been a little while now, but I can still do my best. But one of the main reasons I chose Tufts was I had some flexibility in what I wanted to study, and I was super undecided. So when you apply, you're only deciding which school you want to apply to, and then you have access to all of the majors within those schools, and you don't have to declare your major right away. So we're a research university, which means, and we're a tier one research university, which what that really means is we produce a lot of research, and our undergraduates have a ton of access to research within the university. Research is a really confusing thing when you haven't really experienced it. And I'm sort of speaking for myself. When I was a high school student, I would not have known what research really looked like in a college environment until I actually got there. I would have just assumed it meant microscopes and lab coats and lab benches. And that can be the case. That is a portion of it. But there's so many other ways to get involved in research. For instance, I was a psychology major at Tufts. I did some work in the social psychology research lab where I was working with young children on their sharing habits. And I used to go to the Boston Museum of Science and I would play games with little kids and give them a bunch of stickers and see how many they want to share here, how many they want to share. Anyway, that's research. I did research in the social psych lab, which took me downtown into Boston to the Museum of Science. So, what's really cool about Tufts is with our research is because we're a larger university from a resource standpoint, there's room for everybody to do all the cool things that they want to do. So that makes us for a really collaborative environment. And when you ask someone about Tufts, you're going to say like, what's Tufts all about? I'd be surprised if they don't mention the sort of collaborative nature amongst our students in our community. And that's really for two reasons. And this is kind of going into the application piece of my talk. So number one is we really look for collaborative students. And that's a big part of our application process is thinking about how you're going to come into our collaborative environment. We have competitive programs with sports and, mock trial and debate and like all clubs. Like there are competitive programs, but the classes and the environment itself is a collaborative environment. So the example I always give is, let's say you want to join a research lab. And if I were the professor and I said, hey, I have one spot in my research lab, whoever gets the highest exam grade is going to get that spot. You and your friends wouldn't study together, probably. You'd be competing against each other. Instead, I say, I've got these spots in the research lab. You can all join. So work together. So that's kind of the vibe of Tufts. We're a place where if you ask like, how do you describe Tufts students, you're going to hear all kinds of like buzzwords that I'm sure a lot of colleges also echo, which doesn't make them any less true. But you hear at Tufts that it's cool to be smart. You hear students take their work seriously, not themselves seriously. I feel like I'm a pretty good example of that. And then, it's that collaborative nature is, I think, the main piece that you'll find. Students really work together. They get their hands dirty. They get outside of the classroom. If you're interested in STEM and you want to go work at the maker spaces and labs and wood shops and metal shops and like, mess around with some things, you'll have opportunities for that in your classes, but also opportunities just to do that for fun. And the cool part is no one's ever going to ask you what you're majoring in. If you wander into, one of the music studios and you want to jam out on a guitar or piano, no one's going to ask you if you're a music major. So Tufts is a very interdisciplinary environment. It's a place where you can study one thing and be involved in something totally different. And again, I kind of relate that back to my high school experience where that wasn't always the case. For instance, I was an athlete and also really interested in music in my high school. That was kind of tough to combine. It was a lot of one or the other. At Tufts, everybody's kind of doing everything. So whether you're an engineer thinking about something in STEM or in tech, you can also be you could be a mechanical engineer with a minor in English, and you're focusing on poetry or creative writing. So those types of combinations aren't really weird at Tufts. In fact, they're really common. So that's like a nuts and bolts 35,000 foot view of Tufts. I will talk about our essays and our application a little bit. And honestly, a lot of what Jennifer said, I will say a lot of the same thing. So if I repeat, it's just because it's true for a lot of places. So we ask two questions, or I should say, there are two opportunities for supplemental questions. One of them is required, which is basically, I want to go to Tufts because dot dot dot. Think of it as the way I still phrase it because it's what it was when I was a Tufts student. Why Tufts? And it's all kind of similar. Colleges have their own unique way of asking, why do you want to be here? The second is an optional, I shouldn't say optional. You have choices between a few different questions. Those questions are being published soon, so I don't have what the final questions are for our upcoming year. What I can tell you is they generally revolve around other areas of your life, whether it's your community, your family, any sort of projects that you're into, and they give nice options where they're kind of broad questions where you can take them where you want. So, not having them right here, I can still give you advice on what I know the themes will be. So, but I want to talk about the why Tufts question first off, because much like Jennifer said, it is a huge part of our application process, and very similar to CMC. When we get down to our application review, I would say most of our applicants are academically qualified, competitive, whatever you'd like to say. In fact, like last year, I think it was about 80% of our students that applied to Tufts. If we just looked at them academically, they all fit into some range of what would be considered academically admissible to Tufts. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that actually means, and we can talk data and numbers. We can get into all that fun stuff. But I do want to focus on the writing portion. So in that why Tufts question, the first thing I always like to do is I'm going to give you an example of an answer to why Tufts that will not exactly jump off the page in a pool of 35,000, which is how many students we had apply to Tufts last year. All right. So this is, I don't want to say this is what not to do, but this is not exactly earth-shattering of a response. All right. So my answer could be, I want to go to Tufts because I'm looking for a medium-sized research university near a big city where I can double major in economics and Spanish, where I can also study abroad and get involved in, someone just asked about crew team. Yes, we have crew. And I can also do club crew. Okay. Those are all great reasons to want to go to Tufts. Awesome reasons. We have all of those things, and they're all great. They're all awesome programs. The problem is thousands of schools have those things. And we are one of hundreds of probably schools near big cities where we are just outside the city and we're sort of medium sized and we have double major opportunities and study abroad opportunities. So those are great reasons to want to go to Tufts, but they leave me with a question. And so this is where like the meat of my advice comes in. I've been told it's helpful, so I hope it is. You'll tell me when you're writing your essays if it is. But it leaves me with a question, and that question is, so what? So what? Okay, I want to go to a medium-sized research university near a big city. So what? Or what about it? However you'd like to phrase that question, that follow-up question. I want a double major in economics and Spanish. So what? Right? So when I think of the essays that really stand out in our process, they're the essays that they just give me the answer to so what. So answer the question, so what, and then just delete everything before. Just jump into why you want to do those things at that place. You don't have to tell me that you want to come to Tufts because you can double major in economics and Spanish. We know that. We know you can do that. You don't have to tell us you want to come here because we have great research opportunities. We know that too. Give me the so what, that what about it, dive a little bit deeper. And that's where you'll be able to really kind of, um, you know, individualize your essay in response to topics that maybe a lot of students are talking about, because a lot of students will talk about research when it comes to Tufts or our location or our size. Those are common themes, and they're not wrong. They're not bad. Those are all great reasons. They're reasons why I wanted to go to Tufts. But it's just more the sort of like what about it type answer that we're looking for. I got a question here. Can you give an example of a good so what? Yes. All right. So put me on the spot. So let's say, all right, well, so here, I'm gonna use myself and some things that I did. So I'm kind of cheating because I already did these things. But let's say that I was applying to Tufts right now and I knew I wanted to study psychology, which was not the case when I applied to Tufts. I had no idea. But I had some really awesome experiences with some professors at Tufts that, I think there are great professors everywhere, but I think the student professor relationship at Tufts was really special for me. And I wasn't really expecting that. So what you could do is, let's say you know what you want, what you're thinking about studying. Maybe it's psychology, right? Or it doesn't matter what it is, but again, just using myself as an example. Let's say it's psychology. So what I could do is go look at the psych department webpage, check out all the professors on there, read their biographies, read about the classes that they teach, read about the research labs that they're working with. And maybe I would have found the professor that ran the lab that I was in. And I found this lab because when I took Psych 1 at Tufts, it was my least favorite class that I took at Tufts. And it was the class that I probably struggled in the most. But what I did was, after that first class, I got down from the back row of the lecture hall and I went down to the professor and I said, "Hello, I'm John. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. Help me, please." And I ended up going to her office hours. She became my advisor. She learned a little bit more about me, put me in touch with a colleague of hers who she thought I could be a good fit for their research lab. So maybe in my research of Tufts, I come across that research lab, the social psychology research lab, and I learn about their interest in working with children and how their behavioral patterns and their sharing patterns. Now I'll tell you, I have a 2.5-year-old. I have no idea what makes sense anymore. So all I do know is that she does love stickers, and that's what we were working with in the lab. Love stickers. I didn't decorate my water bottle. She did. But anyway, maybe I could talk a little bit about, in my Why Tufts essay, instead of saying I want to do research, I could say, well, I learned a lot about Professor Thomas's research lab, and I would love to get involved in her work with young kids, and I see that there's opportunities to study at the Museum of Science, and I could do this or that. I'm already deeper. I'm already deeper than just I want to do research. I'm already deeper than I just want to be in the big city. But now I've targeted some specifics within a department, some specifics within a connection I've made with this professor. Even if you've never met them, read something interesting on our website, learn a little bit more. Check out the Instagram. Maybe there's a post on something. Check out our blogs and our admissions web pages. And I'm kind of now speaking for all schools, like see what they're giving you, because what we give you is fair to use. Like we're posting things for you to use and for you to learn. So you dive deeper in that, and then honestly, there's really no wrong answer. It's just what is your answer, not what is an answer that could apply to 1,000 schools and could apply to 1,000 students. Why is this particularly interesting for you? And then honestly, there's literally no wrong answer. It could be about any aspect of our university. Um, I'm seeing that's what students do when applying for grad school too, finding a professor or center with whom to do research. Yes, great advice. So someone saying if you're applying to grad school, you're doing the same things. So it all revolves around, why is this specific to you? And I got some great advice, which this is probably again not unique advice, but it was helpful to me. So now I shared, and that was if you all on here wrote your essays, whether it's a supplemental essay or your personal statement, whichever, and you didn't write your names on them, could your friends and family identify yours if you all put them on a table? And could you, if they read them all, could they find yours? The answer should be yes. They should be able to find your essay. So that brings me to the sort of tone of these essays. And again, every school operates differently in their review of their essays. From our standpoint, we read all of your applications in groups. It's no one particular person is reading an application. We have at least two people reading every application, and we're having conversations about them. So there's a perception I think out there, and then I'm going to wrap up and turn it over to David. There's a perception out there that I think admissions officers are like grumpy old robots behind a giant desk in a cave, and we just have a deny stamp, and an application comes through, and we hit it with that deny stamp. That's not the case. I hope you guys all get that impression that that's not the case here. We're real people, and there's real people reading your essays. So you don't have to use a thesaurus for every word in your application. Don't use ChatGPT. We can tell. Like sound like you. So that's where I say, be authentic to your voice. And I always joke with people, like if you're funny and you want to be funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't be funny. Like be you, and worry less about trying to give us what you think we want to hear, and give us what is just honest to you. Because here's the other thing, and this is like some of the harder points of advice that I'm going to give that are maybe a little harder to digest. When we read applications, we're trying to think about who is the best fit for our schools. Because at the heart of what we're looking for, we want you to be successful and be happy at our schools. That's the number one reason. It's not a self-serving reason. It's that we want you, if you come to Tufts or anywhere else, we want you to be happy here and be successful. So if we're reading your application and let's say that you're saying, I want to go to Tufts because I really want to go to nursing school. Tufts doesn't have a nursing school. So if you come to Tufts and you're going to show up and you're going to be like, hey, where's the nursing building? Right? You're going to be very unhappy. So it may be less fun in the moment if you're saying something and it's like maybe you're not admitted to one school or the other, but maybe that's because there's reasons behind that, and that's going to be helpful to you in the long run. So I'm not saying, add things to your application and that you are going to deter places from admitting you. I hope you don't get that impression. But what I just mean is that the more honest you are, the more homework you do on each school, the more authentic you are, it's going to benefit you in the long run. So I'll stop there because I just gave you a ton. I'll kick it to David, and I'll be happy to answer any more questions later on. But David, to you.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name is David. I am one of the assistant deans of admission here at Wake Forest University. We are located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We're kind of a small to medium-sized city, about 250,000 people. We're a liberal arts institution as well. We're a bit smaller than Tufts. We have about 5,500 undergrads, but we are also a very research heavy institution, which I'll talk about a little bit in a second. But as I said, liberal arts institutions, so we have a set of divisional requirements that we ask all of our students to complete. So you'll take some humanities, you'll take some English, you'll take social sciences like psychology, you'll take natural sciences, the whole gamut of things that we require you to take before you actually declare your major or your minor. We don't let you declare your major or your minor actually until your second semester sophomore year. We want to make sure that you really know what you want to study. And the liberal arts piece is extremely helpful for a variety of reasons. Like we want you to have that really well-balanced education when you leave, but it also serves some practical purposes. I always tell my students that I'm speaking with this little anecdote that when I came to Wake Forest, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I had a Wake Forest School of Medicine t-shirt in high school before I had a Wake Forest sweatshirt. I was going to work in geriatrics. I worked in a nursing home. I had the whole plan. I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. And turns out that I met this class called organic chemistry, had a bad breakup. It's like Bruno, we don't talk about it. And so I had to kind of shift and do something else. And the really cool thing about Wake Forest is that because you're taking all these different classes and because they don't really let you declare a major till your almost your junior year, it really gives you a chance that if you come into Wake Forest like me and you have this plan and you get a hiccup, it's very easy to transition to something else. And if you come to Wake Forest and you have no idea what you want to do, it's really great because you get all these choices and you figure it out very easily. And then also if you come to Wake Forest and you're like the Simone Biles of, your plans and you stick the landing every time, and you come in and you leave Wake Forest the best doctor ever made, you're still leaving with a really great education across a lot of different areas. So Wake is really great about that. In terms of research, a bit like Tufts, we are not quite tier one yet. We're working on it, but we have lots and lots of research opportunities here at Wake Forest. I worked in a plant lab for 4 years. Even when I switched to become a Spanish major, I ended up becoming a Spanish major and a Spanish teacher for 20 years before coming to higher ed. But even while I was at Wake Forest as a Spanish major, I still worked in a plant lab doing research for NASA. So Wake has a lot of opportunities for things like that if you want to do research in anything. And much like John talked about in terms of the different types of research, as a high school student, I completely expected when you said research to be in a lab, pipettes, beakers, flask, blowing things up. At least that was my experience in the plant lab. But you can also do research in like theater costume design. If you want to do research in art history, if you want to do research in psychology, Spanish, religion, whatever it may be, there are lots and lots of opportunities for that here at Wake. We have a program called Eureka, which is for undergraduate research. And if you want to apply for a grant, for example, we have a student in our office that went to France for the summer to research artwork made and hidden and moved around during World War II during the occupation of France. And so she got a full grant to study abroad in Paris, do all of her travel, do her accommodations. And those are the kind of opportunities that we have here at Wake that you can do all these sorts of cool research opportunities. We also have a day during family weekend where you would demonstrate what you have done in your research. So we call it undergraduate research day. And families come in during family weekend, they get to see your posters and what you've accomplished. So lots of support for that. We also have a lot of support for our students in general, like tutoring centers, writing centers. We have lots of, you actually get an advisor before you even get to Wake that helps you figure out which classes to take. So lots and lots of support for our students while you're here. And we also have an office specifically to help you once you leave Wake or once you're getting ready to leave Wake. So one of the, when we do these college presentations, a lot of times we have lots of statistics about our school. The one that I think that I'm the most proud of is at Wake Forest. Within 6 months of graduation, 98% of our students are either in grad school or in a job that's related to their major or a job that they want. So 98%. And the national average is about 60. And that's partially accomplished by this office we have called the Office of Personal Career Development. And they really work with you to help you figure out where you're going to do once you leave Wake Forest. What's fun too is that as an alumni, I went to Wake Forest, graduated back in 2000. If I wanted a new job and was starting to look for a new profession, I don't want to. I love what I'm doing now. But if I wanted to do that, I could walk into their office this afternoon and they would help me. It's a lifelong commitment to our students and to our alumni to help them figure out what they're going to do after life here at Wake Forest. So that's kind of Wake a little bit in a nutshell. I'll say a little bit more about just kind of like the tone and tenor of Wake Forest. A lot of what we do is about service. Our motto is Pro Humanitate, is a big part of what we do here. So we do a lot of activities and lots of events university wide in the name of service. Our motto Pro Humanitate means for humanity, which is the idea that we want to leave the world a bit better off than we found it. And so thinking about that, I'm going to segue a bit into our supplemental questions because we are looking for elements of this Pro Humanitate ideal as we look through our supplemental answers for the questions that we have. So we have a bit more than Jennifer and John do in terms of our supplementals. We have really kind of 5 supplemental questions, one of which is required, which is the why Wake Forest, just much like John was talking about the why Tufts and Jennifer with why Claremont McKenna. We really want you to think about, and I might want to go over this too much because I think John gave a lot of really good details about how to answer this type of question. Dig deep, dig deep and figure out what it is about Wake Forest or Tufts or Claremont McKenna that really interests you. What is it specifically that makes you want to come here? Bear in mind that we read a lot of applications every year. At Wake, we read about 20,000, and we read every single one of them. A human looks at every single one of them, and we're looking for answers that really stand out. What sets you apart from your fellow applicants? What is it about Wake Forest that we know that you understand what we do here? And I would also say to convey that not only do you want to get from us in terms of an education, as we know that when all of us go to college, we want to learn and get that great education. Also talk about or think about what it is that you are going to bring to us. What mark are you going to leave on our campus? What mark are you going to leave on our university community? Because we want good people. We want people that believe in our Pro Humanitate stance and our ideals, and to think about what it is that you bring to the table for us as well. Like, what are you going to leave behind once you graduate? So those are the kind of things to think about when you're doing the why, Wake Forest, Tufts, Claremont McKenna, all the other schools. What is it that specifically draws you to the institution, and what specifically can you can you give us as well? So that's our first question, which is the required kind of extra supplemental question. We have 4 other questions that we ask. They are not full essays. The 2 of them are written like a write-up, but usually it's 2 or 3 paragraphs. It can be 1 big paragraph. It doesn't really matter. It's not a formalized essay. But the idea is, well, let me start with the 2 longer questions, and then I'll talk about the 2 shorter ones. So one of our questions is, tell us what piques your intellectual curiosity or has helped you understand the world's complexity. And it goes on to say this can be something from school, it can be a project, it can be a community project, something in your personal life. But what is it that piques your intellectual curiosity? What makes you curious about the world and you want to learn more about? Our second question is, Dr. Maya Angelou, renowned author, poet, civil rights activist, and former Wake Forest University professor, inspired others to celebrate their identities and to honor each person's dignity. Choose one of her powerful quotes, and how does that quote relate to your lived experience or how you plan to contribute to the Wake Forest community? So Dr. Angelou was a professor at Wake Forest for 35 years, and we honor her memory by asking this question about her. And the crux of this question is for you to identify a quote that she has said or she has written and talk about how it reflects in your own life. The biggest piece of advice I have about this is that I think everyone, which is natural, everyone Googles Maya Angelou quotes, and a big list comes up on Wikipedia, right? And they pick one that sounds nice. That is what most of our applicants do. It's great. I haven't read anything that Maya Angelou has written or said that it wasn't great. But what I recommend is to read one of her books, read one of her poems, read something specific, read it in the full context, and not just pick a quote that you've Googled from Wikipedia. And I say that because we get the same 2 or 3 quotes that are beautiful quotes, probably for 60 or 70% of our applications. If you dig deeper, you stand out. Having that, one of my favorite quotes is about people won't remember what you said to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. powerful quote, something that I deeply believe in myself, we probably see that every 3 applications. So find something that sets you apart, that shows that you've dug really deep for this question. So those are our 2 longer kind of questions, 2 or 3 paragraph answers. The other 2 questions we have are actually lists. And so the first list is list 5 books that you've read that have intrigued you. It doesn't have to be 5 books that you've loved. Just give us 5 books that you have read either through school or personally that have intrigued you, have left some sort of indelible mark on you in terms of how you've interpreted it, how you've consumed it, digested it, and give us that book list. And then finally, it's one of our more popular, we're kind of infamous or famous, whatever, whichever avenue you want to go down, for the list of give us your top 10. And it can be whatever top 10 you want it to be. I cover the DMV, it's a DC, Maryland, Virginia. So I always joke with students that I would love to get a top 10 list of the best crab cakes in Baltimore. I'm a big crab cake fan. But do something that's original to you. And what I like to convey about all of these questions, and I think that both Jennifer and John have talked about this as well, you want to stand out. Again, we read a lot of applications. Most of the applications that we read are admissible in terms of your academics. Okay? We're looking for people who stand out, who are creative, who really go that extra mile to tell us who they are as a person. And so when we get lists that, I always joke that, I personally am a big Swiftie. I love me some Taylor Swift, but please don't give us your top 10 favorite Taylor Swift songs. They're all good. You can't rank them, so don't even try. But don't do that. Do something that's creative. And I'll give you an example that's actually with Taylor Swift. A couple of 3 years ago, before I was in the office, there was a student who did a top 10 list of her favorite Taylor Swift songs or lyrics, but they were written in mathematical terms. So the entire list was written in mathematical expressions, formulas, theorems, proofs, what have you. And we have a former math major on staff, and he had to translate the list for that particular dean because they had no idea what they were saying. But that was creative, right? Because it showed the love of mathematics and their ability to think about things in math in a more abstract way and apply them to her favorite artist. That was a really cool list. But just giving us your top 10 lists of her favorite songs is less impressive, if that makes sense. So think about something that can be creative. One of my favorite lists this past year was a young man wrote about his favorite MLB baseball uniforms based on the tint of the threads on the sleeves and all the stitching. And it was unique, it was specific, it was very specific. But it was something that showed his kind of creativity, and he stood out to me. Like I still remember him after reading 2,000 applications, right? So you want to think about ways that make us remember you, make you stand out, because again, most of you will be academically admissible to Wake Forest. We just need people that stand out. We want to make sure that we are getting the right people in our institution, and this is a way that you can stand out to us. So that is kind of the gist of our questions that we have at Wake. I'm going to stop here, let you guys ask us questions to the whole group. But yeah, thanks so much, and go Deeps.
Thank you all so much. So I just put, I'm a big fan of the Common Data Set, and I go on there all the time to look at schools and what they value is the most important. And obviously, every single school says that the transcript is the most important piece of your application and the rigor, et cetera. Where would you rank the supplemental for each of your schools? Would you put that in very important, important, considered, not considered? So David, why don't you go ahead and go first this time?
I put us in the second level, so considered important, not the most important, but the next one down.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Probably same. I think it would come after obviously academic preparation. We're looking at engagement outside of the classroom, and then supplemental and optional components would definitely come in third for sure.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I would echo this. I think it's like just below the academic portion because that's the most important in terms of making sure that the student will be academically successful at our school. I can tell you, I can speak for myself personally. I can't speak for every member of our staff. I will tell you that after I look at academics, the why Tufts question is the first thing I go to. So we all have our own habits of reading and clicking in our portals and everything. For me, and I know a lot of my colleagues, we go right to that supplemental essay, and specifically the why Tufts. So I think it helps frame the student in our lens. If we are then, you're telling me that you're interested in X, Y, or Z, and then I go to your extracurricular list, or I'm reading your recommendations, and they're talking about those things too. It's like, oh, okay, cool. This is starting to come together a little bit. So.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I would go to the Y Tufts next also if I were reviewing, just because that's so personal. And I just want to point out, if you look in the chat, John, Tufts does track demonstrated interest. So there is a form in there. If Tufts is a school that you're interested in, or even if it's not at this point, you should still fill out that form that you were on this Zoom today, so that he can put that in his vault of information that he collects on you. So that's really cool. All right, I had another question. I just lost it. Gail or Jenny, do you have any questions, or other CCICs, or anybody else that's on this call, parents or students? Do you have any specific questions? No, I'm good. Okay. Gail, anything?
No, I don't really have any questions, but I thought it was very informative, and I think I'm hoping that my kids at WJ will see the recording of this and get a lot of insight from it.
I did just think of my other questions. So how would you,
No.
the personal, yes, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The personal statement,
Mm.
which goes to pretty much every school, there are a few that don't read them, but the personal statement talks more about who the kid is. Which one do you think, like, kids will come into me and they'll say, I'm applying to this many schools, and how should I, when I'm doing my applications, where should I spend the most time? Should it be on my activities? Should it be on my personal statement, my supplemental, blah, blah, blah. I say, well, you should spend time on everything, but like, the personal versus, since this is a supplemental essay, workshop, how do you compare sort of the personal statement with the supplemental in order of importance?
That's a hard question, and I think is potentially going to have different answers based on the college. We still read the personal statement, but it is often can be the most curated piece, and so it gives us more insight into who the student is as an individual, and it can sometimes shed light on like fit with CMC, but that's not the essential element that we're looking for. So if it doesn't, then that doesn't mean it's not a disadvantage for a student. So the personal statement can't be like a catch-all. It should not be a catch-all. It should be a snapshot, in my opinion, of something about that sheds light on who the student is at their core. Again, around the values. I talk a lot about values. And sometimes just because of who the student is and what's important to them, that will resonate with a element of fit with a particular college. But it doesn't have to. So there shouldn't be that pressure to make the essay be in alignment with every college you're applying for. It really should be just letting people know who you are, that regardless of where you're applying, that really should be about who you are, and in alignment with makes sense with the prompt that you select. But the supplemental, I think it's hard because it is important. It is helpful for us to really get a sense of who the student is and who they're going to be in our community. And then the supplemental responses are, I think, a little bit more for CMC's process. Those can be a little bit more those influence the final decision more than the personal statement will.
Okay.
So they're both equally important for different reasons. Personal statement to really fill out who the student is, add sort of volume and body to the lists that we're looking at, right? Resumes and transcripts. So it kind of fills out personality. And then the supplemental is where the student is like, here's why I see all of what I just put together, which goes to everybody. Here's why I see all of this fitting at your institution.
Great. That's a good way to describe it. All right, John, you want to go next?
I think the last thing you just said, Jennifer, there is
Mhm.
like, perfect. I'm gonna use that later. Just
I agree.
like taking all the things that you put here, now how does it apply to your school? I think that is like so perfectly put. Because I mean, we do also read every essay, and it is also important, but it's not necessarily the area of the application where we're sitting there thinking like, okay, but how does this apply to us necessarily? It's more, this is about you. I had a colleague of mine who, like, she used to give advice saying, good topics for your essays can revolve around, what's a problem that you've had to solve, or, what's a community or something that you've engaged with or helped. And that doesn't have to be like some extravagant service trip. It can be, a neighbor or a sibling. And then, thinking about keeping it related to you as much as you can. I think there's easy pitfalls to get into where you talk about, I think if you Google, like, I haven't done this, but if you Google like most common essay topics, you probably see like the big game or like my injury or my service trip or what, these things. I think that what students oftentimes fall into is it quickly becomes not about them. It becomes more about the thing or the person they're talking about, which is, I think, probably one of the trickiest things to do. Because if you're talking about something that's really important to you, it's easy to talk about that thing, less about how it applies to you. So I think just think about that. Think about, what are you passionate about? What's the topic that you're really interested in? But how does it come back to you and your sort of personality? And I'm going to stop there because I don't want to overcomplicate. I don't want to take away from Jennifer's answer. Just stick with what Jennifer said. How does
Just write down what
this,
she said.
take this and put it how it applies to their school? That's perfect.
I'm going to be using that too. All right, David.
I'm going to be using it as well. So thank you. Yeah, and just to piggyback on what both Jennifer and John have said, like, I think for me, I get to know you through the personal statements, and then I get to know why you want to do Wake Forest, come to Wake Forest through the supplementals. Ultimately, because my job is to take all the information I have and to write you up, to like do this write up to go onto our admission selection committee. That the more information I have about you and the more information about how you are going to fit into our community, that is key. And that's why, even though our questions are supplemental, they're optional. I really encourage folks to do them because it gives me more information to convey. And in terms of the personal essay, everything that has been said, I think is probably enough, but I'll share one example. That my favorite essay that I read this season was about a student who is he wrote about being the middle child and what it meant to him. And he talked about stereotypes. He talked about, he debunked some of them. He embraced others, and he was funny. And it was something that I did not read from any other student that I read this year, because you do have these pitfalls of the big game, the sports injury, the big service trip, like things like that, all of which are valuable. Like, I hurt my knee in high school, not from sports, just from walking. But it was horrible. I had a really invasive knee surgery, and it was horrible. And it was all that was on my mind. But we get so many of those, and to think about things that are unique, again, things that make you stand out. And this kid wrote really comically about being the middle child, about being forgotten. Like, he was left at a party because they were worried about the older sibling getting into trouble, and the younger sibling, was a baby, and so he was just left at this party, and all these, and it was just funny and different. And it was about him and how he handled these situations. So it wasn't about the game, it wasn't about the knee injury, it was about himself. And I learned so much about him in that process. And that's what we want to do. We want to learn about you. Like, grandma's great, but don't talk about grandma. Like, and as someone who loved their grandmother dearly, I say that with a little bit of trepidation, but like, she's wonderful, but tell us about you. And so that's just my bit of advice, making sure you come up with a topic that you can tell us who you are as a person and why we want you a part of us, a part of our community.
Thank you. And my last question, because somebody direct messaged me. Are there any other essays in your applications, any of the three of you, other than the personal statement or supplementals? Do you have any other spot where students are required to write? Nope.
Slightly shameless plug, but no other writing. But we are a school that strongly recommends an interview or optional video, which is in alignment with the kind of stuff we gather from essays. So
Okay,
more about who they are.
wonderful. Well, I've learned something here, and I thank you all so much. I'm going to turn off the recording because I don't like to hear my voice.